Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Reading News Articles Daily. First, small is good. Mudra loan NPAs at just 3.3% in 7 years. Banking sector NPAs higher than 6% over previous 6 year. Shyamlal Yadav, New Delhi, November 27. In over 7 years since launch, borrowers of Mudra loans, essentially micro and small enterprises, have paid their EMIs, that is, equated monthly installments, to banks. Non-performing assets of banks for Mudra loans, including those extended during the COVID-19 pandemic when small enterprises were the worst hit, are lower than the average NPAs of the sector as a whole. Data obtained under the Right to Information Act reveals. Bad loans under the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana for all banks, public, private, foreign, and state cooperative, regional, rural, and small finance, since the launch of the scheme on April 8, 2015, added up to Rs 46,053.39 crore as on June 30, 2022. This is just 3.38% of total disbursement of Rs 13.64 lakh crore under the scheme during the period. Almost half of the banking sector as a whole, which stood up to 5.97% for the year ending March 31, 2022. The gross NPAs of the banking sector in the previous 6 years was much higher than in 2021-22. It was 73% in 2020 to 2021, 8.2% in 2019-20, 9.1% in 2018-19, 11.2% in 2017-18, and 9.3% in 2016-17, and 7.5% in 2015-16. Within the three categories, the NPAs for Shishu loans up to Rs 50,000 were the lowest at 2.25% of disbursements and the highest for Kishore loans Rs 50,000 to Rs 5 lakh at 4.49%. For Tarun loans over Rs 5 lakh up to Rs 10 lakh. Bad loans were 2.29% of disbursements. The Micro Units Development and Refinance Agency's Mudra was launched on April 8, 2015 by Prime Minister Narendra Modi to provide loans up to Rs 10 lakh to non-corporate, non-farm, small and micro enterprises, called the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana. Loans are given under three categories: Shishu up to Rs 50,000, Kishore Rs 50,000 to 5 lakh, and Tarun from 5 lakh to 10 lakh. Mudra loans do not require any collateral or security and hence were perceived to be very risky. The data under the RTI response received by the Department of Finance Services under the Union Ministry of Finance reveals 5 interesting trends. Number 1, public sector banks accounted for almost 46% of all Mudra loans in value terms till June 30 this year. The accumulated bad loans for Rs 31,025.30 crore, which is 4.98% of their disbursements of Rs 6,23,279.85 crore. As a percentage of total advances, this is also lower than 5.97% for the banking sector as a whole. Private banks have far better recovery than public sector banks. For them, bad loans or non-performing assets during the 7-year period stood at Rs 6,469.2 crore, just 1.32% of their disbursements of Rs 4,90,652.6 crore. Private banks were next to public sector banks in terms of their market share in value terms. They accounted for almost 36% of the total disbursements. Of the total 19.78 crore beneficiaries, also referred to as loan accounts across Shishu, Kishore and Tarun categories, only 82.98 lakh loan accounts for 4.19% turned bad. This means only 4 beneficiaries among 100 beneficiaries defaulted on repayments. Number 4, private banks may account for just 36% of the value of loans disbursed, but in terms of the number of loans accounts, they created to 10.46 crore beneficiaries, or almost 53% of the total 19.78 crore loan accounts. What this suggests is private banks gave smaller denomination loans, but their coverage was much wider. This is corroborated by data. The share of private sector banks is very high in Shishu category loans, up to rupees 50,000 of the 4.2 lakh crore disbursed to the 15.39 crore beneficiaries under Shishu category. Private sector banks accounted for almost 60%. On the contrary, public sector or state-owned banks, which in value terms accounted for almost 46% of the loans disbursed, covered just 4.66 crore beneficiaries, or under 24% of the total Mudra loan accounts. This reveals that the average loan size for public sector banks was much larger than the private sector banks. The share of the public sector in Kishore category disbursements, rupees 50,000 to 5 lakh, was 35.64%, and in Tarun category was rupees 5 to 10 lakh loans, was much higher at 61%. According to RTI's reply, regional rural banks RRBs disbursed over rupees 1.09 lakh crore, that is 8.06% of the total, to 1.05 crore customers, 5.38% of the total, and small finance banks provided over rupees 1.40 lakh crore, which is 10.27% of the total disbursement, to 3.61 crore beneficiaries, 18.22% of the total, as on June 30, 2022. Similar to the public sector banks, the NPAs of the RRBs too are high at about 4.22%. For small finance banks, the NPAs were lower at 2.79%. This was our first article. Moving ahead. The second article is about China COVID protests spread. Xi fails calls to step down. Quite interesting article. Let's see. Police protesters clash in Shanghai, demonstrations in Beijing, universities too. Dakhe Kang and Huizong Wu, Shanghai, November 27. Protesters, angered by strict anti-virus measures, called for China's powerful leader to resign, an unprecedented rebuke, as authorities in at least 8 cities struggled to suppress demonstrations. Sunday, that represent a rare direct challenge to the ruling Communist Party. Police using pepper spray drove away demonstrators in Shanghai who called for Xi Jinping to step down and an end to one party rule. But hours later, people rallied again in the same spot. Police again broke up the demonstration, and a reporter saw protesters under arrest being driven away in a bus. The protesters, which began Friday and have spread to cities including the capital, Beijing, and dozens of university campuses, are the most widespread show of opposition to the ruling party in decades. In a video of protest in Shanghai verified by the assisted press, chants sounded loud and clear: Xi Jinping, step down. CCP, step down. Xi, the most powerful leader since at least the 1980s, awarded himself a third 5-year term in October as leader of the ruling party. Some expect him to try to stay in power for life. 3 years after the virus emerged, China is the only major country still trying to stop transmission of COVID-19. Its zero COVID strategy has suspended access to the neighborhoods for a week at a time. Some cities carry out daily virus tests on millions of residents. Protests erupted after a fire broke out Thursday and killed at least 10 people in an apartment building in the city of Urumqi in the northwest, where some have been locked in their homes for 4 months. Sorry for mispronunciation, if any. About 300 demonstrators gathered late Saturday in Shanghai, most of whose 25 million people were confined to their homes for almost 2 months starting in late March. On a street named for Urmiki, one group of protesters brought signs honoring those who died in the blaze. Another, according to a protester, was more active, shouting slogans and singing the national anthem. The protesters and another, who gave only his family name Zhao, confirmed the chants against Xi. This scene turned violent early Sunday. Hundreds of police broke up the more active group before they came for the second as they tried to move people off the main street. The protesters said that he saw people being taken away, forced by people into vans, but could not identify them. He said protesters yelled slogans, including one that has become a rallying cry, which is we do not want PCR tests but want freedom. On Sunday afternoon, crowds returned to the same spot. In Beijing, a group of around 200 people gathered in a park on the capital's east side and held up blank sheets of paper, a symbol of defiance against the ruling party's pervasive censorship. Posting on social media said there were also protests at 50 universities. Moving ahead, third article. Low conviction, high pileup, Jammu and Kashmir taps special units for Yuwaba cases. Naveed Iqbal. According to the 2021 National Crime Records Bureau NCRB data, Jammu and Kashmir accounts for 97% of the total cases filed under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act for terror-related offences. On an average, 20 to 25 such cases are filed under UAPA in Jammu and Kashmir daily, but the conviction rate is very low. To tackle this as a part of broader counter-terror strategy, the State Investigation Agency SIA, on the lines of the National Investigation Agency NIA, was set up last year, and more recently, Special Investigation Units SIUs have been created in each police district. The result, according to officials, was the police secured 10 UAPA convictions over the last year, while the corresponding figures for previous years were not available, officials said. It was marginally higher this time. Underscoring the need for specialized investigation units, Jammu and Kashmir DGP Dilbag Singh told the Indian Express investigations need to be time bound. Since the normal investigation machinery at the Thana level is engaged in law and order and special cases, among other duties, important cases would suffer sometimes. Therefore, we looked for solution to this issue. He said the following creation of the SIA in November last year and the SIU over the last few months, many cases are advanced stages of investigation and we can expect more convictions towards the end of the year. Currently, the Jammu and Kashmir police are investigating some 1,335 UAPA cases, of which 1,214 are in Kashmir over the last year. The SIA has taken up 80 cases. Of the 884 UAPA cases under trial in Jammu and Kashmir, the SIA is handling 24. Of the cases under trial, 249 are in North Kashmir Range, Baramulla, Handwara, Kupwara, Bandipora, and Sopore. 223 in South Kashmir Region, Pulwama, Avantipura, Anantnag, Shopian, Kulmukam, and 317 in Central Kashmir Range, Srinagar, Budgam, and Ganderbal. With a huge backlog of cases at the district level, the process of capacity building started about 5 months back with the creation of SIUs. The 14 member the 14 member teams under District Superintendent of Police SPs tasked with effective investigation and case building for UAPA cases were first set up in 5 police districts in South Kashmir, followed by Central Kashmir and then the North Kashmir. Srinagar district, because of its case load, has 2 of these specialized units. A senior official who spoke to the Indian Express said the SIUs will ensure better investigation. Due to procedural flaws, sometimes the cases would remain under trial for a very long time, or the accused would get the bail and there would be little flow of up on cases. This puts a lot of pressure on both jails and courts, he said. Another district SP said that in Kashmir, where the situation on the ground remains more important than follow up on in court, the Thana level personnel are constrained for time to focus on investigations. The SIUs will focus on investigations and help secure convictions, he said. He said this would also bring a shift in arrests, as only accused with solid evidence that can be produced in court would be held. NIA officials were roped in for specialized training of the SIU personnel in forensic capability, evidence collection, ensuring chain of custody of evidence, charge sheeting and presentation of cases, and coordination with the prosecution wing. The SIA was set up on a nodal agency for coordinating with the NIA and other central agencies to ensure speedy and effective investigation and prosecution of terrorism related cases. It can register a case independently or as recommended by the DGP Jammu and Kashmir Police.